welcome once again. Tremaine, Mr. Hard Pivot, and I am back on your screen once again, guys. So, again, just real quick, let me get some of the housekeeping out of the way. If this is your first time joining me, first time watching, please drop where you're from. Where you're listening from, what city, what state, what country, right? Want to know where the reach is going. Um, and please, it just does amazing. It's wonderful if you like, share, and subscribe to the channel, especially if you like the content, right? So please like, share, hit that like, smash that like button, share, absolutely subscribe so you can stay up to date anytime I go live with more content, guys. All right. So now that that is out of the way, you can see that today we're talking about the wealth gap widening. And then you'll see $30 packs of chicken wings. Yeah, as an avid eater of chicken wings, guys, I just thought that was horrible. But yeah, a buddy of mine was out shopping, and he was looking for some chicken wings and going to buy some chicken, and came across that. He threw it on one of his sites, I think maybe Instagram, TikTok, or something like that. We're going to talk about how those things relate. Um, but I want to talk about this wealth gap, and what made me want to talk about that today and this morning is. Uh, I was reading the article, I forget where, but the article itself was from the publicintegrities.org. And as I went on there to check it out, to follow up on the article, just saw that it was, it's a .org that just talks about public integrities, whether it's uh, talking about labor disparities, housing, discrimination. I read a few of the articles, and they seem to be basically trying to stay just give both pros and cons and neutral, which I like. You know, you know, information from both sides, not just one sided, and just tries to lay the information and the facts out there, and kind of leaves you to make your own opinion, which I love that type. I love those types of publications and magazines, et cetera, et cetera. All right. So the wealth gap, guys. Now, for those that didn't know, there is a wealth gap in this country. There is a divide, and that divide and that gap is between the haves and the have-nots. Now, this country would like for you to look more specifically in different races and cultures, and what race has more, what culture has more, what race has less, what culture has less. Um, but at the end of the day, it's about those that have wealth and those that don't have wealth. Because those that have wealth, all they see are those that have wealth. They don't see anything else, right? While we see other stuff. So we're just going to talk about the wealth gap that's widening in America, and just like why some of the things we could do, some things you could do individually, some things that legislation is trying to do, just all the above, guys. But we knew this was happening. We knew there was a pandemic, right? This pandemic set the stage for the wealth gap to widen even more, right? Where we saw a lot of money being lost. Uh, but I told you guys, money is never lost. Money is just always transferred, right? So when your naked eye is seeing and thinking that money is being lost and no money is being made, trust me, somewhere, somehow, somebody else is making tons of it. Like some people wait for a pandemic. Some people wait for the ebbs, in the ebbs and the flows of society. They wait for the downturn markets and real estate markets, crypto markets. They wait for those things to invest money so that they can create wealth, right? But that's a mindset. That's a mentality. Uh, that's a different posture that you have to have. That's a different posture and mindset that you have had to have learned, right? That's a different posture and mindset that you would have had to have been taught and to have been a good student to learn, right? All right. So, of course, you're not going to learn that type of stuff in school. So you'd have to learn this through mentors and coaches and stuff like that. And we'll talk about that. And that's another reason. And we'll get to that as far as the wealth gap widening in this country. All right. Oh, actually, let me show you this article. Let me show you a piece of this article, rather. And I thought this was interesting. And in this country, a lot of times things are black and white because we know the history of this country. We know the history of America at the time of slavery, and the time that the slaves were freed, and the disparity between them, not getting land and not getting reparations and not getting money. So that set the generations behind even more to this day, and it allowed generations on the other side to benefit even more to this day because of that disparity. So we get that, right? Um, with that being said, even then, even post uh, slavery, in the times up until now, there were wealthy minorities. There were wealthy blacks, what minorities that created wealth and businesses and created millions of dollars in generational wealth for their family in the midst of all of that post chaos, in the midst of still going through, even though slavery was abolished and stuff like that, and there were some laws for discrimination, anti-discrimination laws supposedly set in place and stuff like that. There was still a lot of rigmarole going on, to say the least. But there was still wealth created through minorities, right? But 11 years before the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the difference in median wealth between whites and black families, and they're trying to account for today's dollars to account for inflation, was about $47,000, right? And that was the $47,000, 50, 100, 200 years ago, right? A lot of money, right? $47,000 to a lot of people is a lot of money right now to this day. Now, but more than half a century has passed since the 60s, right? And there were different laws, like I said before, different laws that banned certain things, tried to ban racial discrimination, to try to level the playing field, so to speak, right? Um, but the wealth gap since then, with all of this stuff that was tried to be put in place, has still went from $47,000 to $164,000, right? So from $47,000, 50, 60 years, 100 years ago, whatever, to $164,000 right now. That's a huge disparity. And that gap is getting bigger. That gap is steady widening. So we're going to talk about, some of the reasons why the gap is widening. And then let's talk about some of the things that we can do, right? Maybe as a society, but more importantly, individually, because that's what's important, right? All right. So let's get that off the screen real quick. So some of the reasons they say that the wealth gap still widens to this day is because those that benefited in the past are way more able to give monetary gifts to their children and grandchildren when needed, like right now, because they have that money set aside. They have that money put in Roth IRA accounts or old bank accounts and stuff like that. So they're able to gift their children not only liquid money, not only liquid fund, liquidity, they're able to gift them assets, right? Buildings, houses, uh, complexes to rent out, to make money, to generate car lots, stores, gas stations. They're able to gift them, things that most people aren't able to gift their children uh, when their children need it, right? Inheritances. So even when they pass, if they're not giving their children a lot of things because they're teaching their children to how to generate wealth, they're teaching their children the rules of the wealthy, they're teaching their children strategies of the wealthy, right? So, but when they pass, you can't take that stuff with you. So they're able to leave an inheritance. They're able to leave a nest egg of liquidity, a nest egg of assets for their children and grandchildren and great grandchildren. So that continues the generational wealth because now the generation behind them have a head start. They have something that they build on. They're not busy trying to build it all while trying to live life, right? So they say that those are some of the things that are continuing to increase that wealth gap, guys. And in between it, there's always a game being played, no matter what, in this country. And in between being able to leave an inheritance, in between being able to give monetary gifts, uh, inside of this country, you talk to, go to school. The things are different now. Get an education, go to college, get a higher education degree, and you'll be just fine because this country is equal and everybody has the same chance of success because of education, da 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 da. So when you get out into the real world, after going through school and living the dream of school and going to college, right? Graduating, happy, proud, and then you get into the real world, and then you see that the mindsets from days gone by, from those that are doing the hiring, those that are doing the firing, uh, they think it was a different mindset. So the disparities that are there in hiring still create a wealth gap. So right, so when I talk generational, when I talk wealth, I don't mean everybody is filthy rich, because wealth to a lot of means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. You know, wealth to some people means just comfort, right? Some people don't mind and don't care. They'll work and just be comfortable to the day they die, and that's fine and dandy. And I have nothing against education. You know, I have 3 college degrees, so I'm definitely not against education, right? I love education, love learning. I think that we all should constantly learn because we are always evolving, right? But the disparities in hiring at that point create a lot of different mindsets, create, anger and resentment, and it creates problems in the household, and which therefore breaks up households. And while the households over here are still doing fine because they have money, they're the decision makers. You know, their family is still put together. Will the mother, father, children, dog, picket fence, green grass, all that stuff is still going on over here, and it's not over here. And that takes its toll uh, down the generational line, right? So that continues to create a disparity in wealth itself, right? So those are just some of the systems that maintain that gap, also, right? So let's talk about one of the biggest. Let's talk about a few of the biggest systems, so to speak, in place that maintain this gap, and how to some of the things we need to do to overcome it, right? Now, I know a lot of you would think that I talked about hiring disparities. I know you talked about monetary gifts and gifts, and I know a lot of you thought that that would be the biggest thing in place that creates this wealth gap, right? And really, it's not. We're going to talk about the first one, and this first one is going to be your biggest expense, right? And my biggest expense, taxes. As we all know, that we get taxed so much in this country. Uh, Taxes on everything, right? We have federal tax, state tax, alarm tax, property tax, tax on death tax, life tax, just tax on top of tax, right? Now, one of the things that the wealthy have understood is a strategy and mastered it, how to minimize paying taxes almost to zero, as much and as often as possible. And I would imagine and I would hope, and my advice to you is to do it legally, ethically, and morally, because of course there's a way to do anything wrong, right? But for the most part, legally, ethically, and morally, minimize their taxes up to zero, because they understand the strategy and they understand that this country incentivizes those that are business owners, those that are entrepreneurs, right? They incentivize those people by allowing them to pay less taxes. They're not doing anything wrong. They're just using the incentive that was afforded to them, the same incentive that's afforded to you and I. So, but in the midst of not understanding that, the working class person gets taxed at the highest tax rate. So, therefore, paying all these extra taxes, paying all these taxes, and not understanding this, not understanding how to minimize their taxes in order to use this money that you could potentially save and not pay to do other things. And this money that's not being paid by the wealthy, they understand to use that money for one thing, to reinvest that money, to allow that money to go out and make more money, because they understand that money is just a tool, right? It's of course it's to pay the bills, it's to buy your toys and stuff like that. But they understand that you allow your assets to buy your toys. So how do you create the assets? By the money that you're saving by not paying these taxes, you are allowing it to make more money for you. So taxes, one of the hugest disparities, right, in creating this wealth gap, because one side understands it, the haves, and the have-nots don't understand. And it's really not something that is that hard to understand once you engage yourself in that understanding, especially nowadays. The world has shrunk so much because of the internet. Information is everywhere now, right? And speaking of information, another one of the wealth gap dividers is higher education. Again, nothing wrong with education. Got 3 college degrees. I have nothing wrong with it. But I do understand specialized education. I'll explain that here in a second. It's better. And now in today's society, in today's world, right? But again, like I said earlier, you get taught to go to school, K through 12, uh, go to college, and to have a career, right? To get the dream job that you wanted. And then you deal with all the rest of the stuff that's going on in the world, the real world. But in the midst of this higher education, you are going into debt. You have to take out loans, right? Most of us don't have that monetary gift system, right? Or that nest egg, or didn't get a big inheritance left to us so we can go to any college we want to and pay for it, right? So you have to take out loans, these student loans. So that's creating debt with high interest. And high interest, if you don't understand it, you pay it. If you understand it, you benefit from it. So if you're on this end of high interest, you're paying it, right? Creating generational wealth for somebody else. So then, even when you get into your dream career and their positions and levels to move up, what do they say? To get to this next level, you need some more education. So what do? You still go back. You get into more debt. Now, at this point, you just met the dream person in your life, wife, husband. You get married, more debt because now you're paying for because we think this wedding need to cost $100,000. Now you have children. And you got the dog, the car, the picket fence that's got to get painted every year, and the grass that you got to keep green so that you don't think that somebody else's grass on the other side is greener. So now all of this is money being spent, money that you didn't have, money that you don't have. So now you don't have money to invest. You don't have money to put out and use it as a tool so that they can create more money and generational wealth for your family because you're too busy trying to fight out of this hole that society says you need to jump into and crawl and dig yourself out of. That's the normal way of doing things. So, specialized education today, guys, as opposed to higher education. Again, nothing wrong with school. Going to school, we need science. We need specific people to do specific things. Don't get me wrong, right? You definitely need to understand how to be a brain surgeon and understand how to do that with precision. So I get that, right? But specialized education, if you're talking about being an entrepreneur, if you're talking about being a business owner, specialized education, especially that it is so more easily accessible nowadays, right? And what I mean by specialized education is that typically entrepreneurs and business owners nowadays, they understand that because you're going to pay for education one way or the other, whether you're in college or whether you're trying to be an entrepreneur, business owner, stuff like that. So, you go get a mentor. You go get a coach. You go get somebody that's been there, that's done that, that's been successful, that's failed, right? Because even in the mentors and coaches' failures, they can show you how to step around those landmines and not make the same mistakes that they made. So you can limit your failures on your path to success. So that's what I mean by specialized education, right, guys? Because hey, either you're gonna pay for education one way or the other. You're gonna pay to get it, or you're going to pay for not having it and trying to go into an endeavor, right? And allow yourself to go through things that you probably shouldn't have to, because somebody could have showed you how to go around it, showed you how to avoid that circumstance because they've experienced it before. So not doing that, right, is absolutely continuing to widen this gap, right? Not having that understanding, not having that knowledge, right? And then believe it or not, guys, and don't look at these things individually. Look at these things put together because everything is a puzzle, right? Look at these things put together, the taxes, the education system, and what I'm about to say, and believe it or not, healthcare, right? Healthcare, and I know what you're going to say, hospitals are nonprofit organizations that are, yes, but you pay to go to hospitals. I mean, you pay for every ambulance trip. If you get into a horrific accident, God forbid, and you need to get into a helicopter, those things are super expensive. So to get into the helicopter. So some people are making life decisions to be able to afford to buy one bottle of pills, because a pill is $100 to $300 a pill. Like some people are not eating properly, are not able to utilize that extra money to do things that they would do to create generational wealth or to create some semblance of it for their children or grandchildren, because they're too busy trying to figure out how to survive because of how expensive healthcare is in this country, right? And I know there have been some legislation here and there to try to curtail that. I think like Obamacare and some stuff like that. We talk about universal care. We look at other countries and look at some of their healthcare systems, and some of the systems seem to work, but for whatever reason, we haven't adapted that here. So when you're so busy worrying about your health, how when you're busy worrying how to afford to be able to take care of yourself, it's really, really hard, if not impossible, to think about wealth, right? I mean, that just goes hand in hand, and this country understands that. So that right there is just another piece of the puzzle that keeps continually increasing this wealth gap, right? So now, with those being, and there's a lot more, don't get me wrong, those are just in this article that I just showed you guys. The article's pretty long. I'll put it in the comments. Like I said, it's from the publicintegrity.org. Seemed to be a pretty good site that talks about the pros and cons of just labor, discrimination, law, health, just a lot of things. And they try to just do the pros and cons. I love sites like that to allow you to draw your own conclusion. So publicintegrity.org is the article that I'm referring to right now. And it's talking about wealth gap widening in America. And those $30 chicken wings I'm going to get to those real soon, trust me. But now, actions that are being taken in legislation, real quick. Now, I'm going to say this because a lot of legislation is talking about actions on trying to decrease, the wealth gap, right, between the haves and the have-nots. And I know there's a lot of in-between games, a lot of as far as races and people in between that, white, black, da, da, da. I'm talking about the have and the have-nots when I talk wealth gap right now. But legislation, because of the history in America, African Americans, most legislation, when you're talking about wealth gap, tends to refer to white, black, right? African American, European. So with those, some legislation has been placed. Some legislation is actually in certain municipalities and states and cities have actually been passed, because some states are not waiting on the federal government, right? And I don't want to make this political, but I do want to just add this little caveat so you can understand where I'm coming from. Some states have passed certain laws to in their own right, in their own way, try to level the playing field, right? Because of the country's history. And I applaud them and I commend them for that. And in that article, it talks about the certain states like Florida and a couple other states in that particular article. And it's on publicintegrity.org and some of the things that they're doing. And it's awesome. I applaud them for that. But and it's basically called reparations, right? You'll hear in this country, a lot of people talk about reparations. And I'm not going to talk about reparations either, whether I'm pro or con, but I will say this. I believe that reparations in the wealth gap widening, shrinkage scenario right now wouldn't be good, because with reparations, I mean, you have to, a sudden amount of money, a windfall of money. Psychologists say for those that are, that come into a lot of money real fast, psychologists say that the money only does one thing. It only exacerbates the person that you are. So if you are a drunk, if you are a gambler, if you are a liar, if you are a cheat, if you are a thief, it's only going to, if you're frugal, right? If you're just very, very frugal with your money, it's going to exacerbate your personality. So with that being said, a big windfall of money for a certain segment or population of people, I just don't think it'll be good right now, because to me, that was just widen the gap even more, because we just want to spend, spend, spend. We're not in the mindset. We don't have the right mindset right now. I think if there was something like that put in place, it should be where a mindset, a teaching, some schooling, some specialized education should be put in place. Other than that, I just think it'll just be a bunch of money gone real fast, and the gap will be even further apart. So you have to have a certain mindset with money. You hear me talk money, mindset, and message all the time, and that's not going to change. All right. So again, applaud the municipalities, states, and cities for doing their things. I appreciate it because some people do have the right mindset, and hopefully those with the right mindset will find those programs, right? But my key and my point today is, what can we do for ourselves today? What can you do for yourself today to uh, shrink that gap? And there's a lot of things you can do today on your own because of specialized education, because of the internet, because of coaching, because of programs, because of different leaders in the community, right? That are doing the right thing, that are preaching about the right mindsets, right? So that when you create your own wealth, you will know how to handle it. Because even if you create your own wealth and you don't have the right mindset, it's still going to go left. That's just the bottom line. You can create your own wealth. You can create your own windfall of money, but without the right mindset, without the right people around you, without the right coaching, without the right leadership, without the right training, without the right knife sharpening you as a knife, you're going to fail. So, um, some of the things we want to talk about, guys. Uh, the reason that $30 pack of chicken wings is $30 is because of the whole gap widening. And let me show you. I think I got a picture. My guy sent me a picture of that. I got to share that with you guys. Hold on one second. I got to share that with you. I would be wrong if I didn't. Let me see. Hopefully, I can show you guys. I can show you. Yeah, hold on. Look at that. This was $34. Okay, I said $30. But because of the transition of wealth, because of the pandemic, because of uh, business owners and entrepreneurs being able to raise the product prices of their products and services arbitrarily, this is what you get: inflation. And inflation is also creating that wealth gap. But you got to understand what inflation is. You have to understand what uh, creates inflation and that causes it to increase, which are a lot of factors, the federal government, interest rates, and business owners and stuff like that. But when this is happening, guys, if you understand these things, these strategies that that I'm talking about, the strategies that a lot of the wealthy know, the strategies that a lot of the wealthy use, the strategies that a lot of the wealthy teach their children and their grandchildren on a daily basis, whether they're saying it figuratively, literally, or showing them figuratively by their actions, right? By their daily actions. Then you learn to outpace inflation. And to outpace inflation mean that a $34 pack of chicken, you might still be upset about it, but it wouldn't hurt so much. You wouldn't feel it. I gotta show that one more time because I want you guys to see. I didn't make this up, guys. That pack of chicken wings was 34. That's a regular pack of chicken. I should have blew the picture up more before I took it. But that's a regular pack of chicken wings in the store, $34, and that was just earlier this month or in the last month. $34. Yeah, $34. But if you're complaining about that, then you have the wherewithal to understand that something's not right. If you're complaining about the price of eggs, the price of gas, you have the wherewithal to understand that something is not right. Then why don't you have the same wherewithal to take the time to learn strategies and implement things in your life, implement changes in your life, implement changes in your mindset to outpace inflation? These are the things that we need to start doing because to create wealth, to create a windfall of money, to create a huge residual income, to create passive income, and not have the correct mindset is to basically do it for nothing at all, to do it for naught, because it won't last. It's not self-sustaining, right? You can't You can't rent a building out of 500 apartments and build it up, but you built the foundation on some on straw, on clay. It won't last. It won't be self-sustaining, and that's what's important. So to lessen the gap, and I'm going to go and get out of here. I'm going to end it with this, guys. To lessen that gap between wealth is to not. It's not just money. It's not just finances. Even that's important, and that's what I mean. But it starts with lessening the mental wealth gap. That's where it starts. You have to start there. You can talk about it all day. You can talk about inflation. You can talk about the price of eggs. You can talk about the price of gas. You can complain about the price of chicken wings, like I'm doing right now, $34 a pack, right? Because I love chicken wings. But you can talk about these things. You can have the wherewithal to understand that something's not right. You got to have the same wherewithal to understand that I need to do something different, right? Things may not change right now, today, right here in your generation, guys, but they have to start changing somewhere. And it has to start with a mindset. Okay. So that being said, guys, hey, I'm here to send some information. Anytime you need, you can always text GAP to 216. And I'm talking about closing that gap, that generational gap, that wealth gap. You can always text GAP to 216-285-0569. And guys, I will text your name and text that keyword, and I'll respond to you personally. I'll get back with you personally. Yes, me. I will respond to you personally. And we just talk, get you a game plan together to get you on that path, that path to understanding how to close this gap. All right. We have a few paths to close this gap. But you have to walk the path yourself. You have to get on the path. You have to choose the path, right? Now, to not make a choice, to not make a decision is to make a decision, believe it or not. So you can see me, you can see other coaches and other leaders and other strategists, and you can hear it and understand it. And yet, if you don't make a decision, you are absolutely making a decision. And you're making that decision for your children, you're making that decision for your grandchildren. So, guys, if you're trying to do something different, you want to close this gap, get with me. Let's get you on this path to closing this gap, guys. Text GAP 216-285-0569. And as usual, guys, I don't know you, but I believe in you. So why don't